What is it exactly that is the mission of the organization?
Is to provide safety and security for victims of domestic violence through education, through intervention, and prevention programs that are already in place. We hope to help end domestic violence in our 12 county service area. We also want to educate as a prevention, and a lot of people don't know this about us. We also help the perpetrators of domestic violence. They need education as well, so we can hopefully end the cycle of violence so they won't perpetrate on somebody else.
What does that education look like?
It's called BIP. It stands for Batterers Intervention Prevention Program, and it's a rotating curriculum. It's for 24 weeks, and it's an hour and a half each week. The abusers, 99% of the time, they're court ordered, or they're forced to go. They've got to pay like $20 a class session, and what they do is they address every single major abusive tactic and thought process that they've had, or even if they didn't have, in order to educate and change that mindset. It's really a mindset they have. They have two core concepts that all abusers have in common. All abusers and perpetrators of domestic violence have two core belief systems. The two core beliefs. The first one is they believe they have the right to control their partner, and the second one is they believe they have the right to use violence to gain or maintain that control. And so what that program does, it re-educates them, it breaks it down, and then it builds them back up with the healthy alternatives and thought process that violence and control, power and control is not love. And everyone has a different background, story, that kind of thing, experiences. So they do a really good job of getting down to the root of it and telling those men, it's mostly men, but we do have a women's group as well, really getting them to rethink their whole process and why they believed what they believe.
Do you guys have any data on the success rate of those classes?
The only data we have is graduation rate, which is about 84%, which is pretty good. However, to have a success rate, we'd have to follow them probably for the rest of their lifetime and stuff. So we just hope and pray that the seed was planted, it took root, and now they can utilize those skills that they learned in their next relationship.
Do people seek you out? Do you guys intervene after a domestic dispute? Is there some sort of court order? How does that function?
Usually it's going to be the two major ways is either through a referral, like usually it's the police department when they police or sheriffs, usually when they are on the scene of a domestic violence incident or happening, they have blue booklets, and it's kind of like a referral guide, and we're one of the agencies on that referral guide. And so the victims will receive their case number on that booklet, and then the police will emphasize, here, you need to call these people for help. So we get a lot of calls through that, or the ERs. Sometimes we'll get some CPS will refer victims over here. And then the other one is they self-seek our services. Either they know about us, or they've heard about us, or social media, or something. Or they'll look at it, or they'll call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and they give they've got a referral, and then they'll call us directly.
What do you guys report to? Is it city, county, state?
Oh, good question. It's hard to pinpoint who we report to because it is so many different sources, and it's all dependent upon funding. So we've got local entities that fund us, for example, like United Way and some different foundations and stuff. So we have to report some of that data to them. Then on the state level, we've got Office of the Attorney General, we've got HHSC. So they have their particular data that they want, so we have to report to them. And on the federal level, we've got VOCA and VAWA. VOCA stands for Victims of Crime Act. VAWA is Victims Violence Against Women Act. So we have mandated data that we have to send them as well. So it really depends on the source, and we report to so many different sources because we're just, it's a hodgepodge of funding that, that we get. So therefore, they want us to justify how we're spending their money. So we have two databases. We keep track of everything and send those reports out so they know where their money's going, how we're spending it, who's getting help, how we're helping them. It's very detailed. It's painstakingly detailed, but I guess it's a necessary evil.
How many women do you guys serve, a year, a month, or I don't know what would be the best time frame to give the average, but...
The easiest way is a yearly count, and it, not just on women, but we include children as well. And it's consistently hovered around the 4,000 range each year, about 4,000 women and children, which is a pretty daunting number, considering. And keep this in mind too, our shelter in Lubbock is the third largest shelter in the state, which says something about the amount of violence that is taking place. Because statistically speaking, we know that domestic violence is so underreported, and Lubbock is certainly not the third largest city in the state. So it's kind of, in a way, it's sad that it's a necessity to have a shelter this large to help the population. However, the good part is, hey, we're here. Use us. Let's stop this stuff. Let's try to end this generational cycle of violence for the next generation and that kind of thing.
Especially knowing in context the comparison to the rest of the state, because we're like, what, 11th? Like the 11th largest?
Something like that. And our area is one of the worst areas for domestic violence in the state as well, which, if you know about child abuse and that kind of stuff, it kind of coincides a little bit, because at any given time, between 40 to 50% of child abuse cases it's going to involve domestic violence as well. So that's not surprising to us that we're up there, because we know the child abuse is a bad thing as well, pretty bad in this area.
You said that one of the missions here is to hopefully end the cycle. And so I understand how that works, to break the cycle for the individual that's in the situation now, to hopefully get them out of it, and hopefully they don't go back to that situation.
Right.
What sort of things, though, are you guys doing to stop the next, the next person that's, or not the repeating, but the next individual that's going to end up in a situation like that?
Let me see. This is going to be a long answer.
Well, that's fine.
Okay. So, if anyone is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that triangle of hierarchy, that's kind of how, I don't know if it was intentional that we base our practices on that, but that's basically what we do. We do a modified version. At the bottom of that triangle is basic human needs. To survive, every human needs safety, they need food, they need water. So that's what the shelter provides at its core basis, is food, clothing, safety, water, that kind of stuff. Then we move up that triangle, and there's so many different crises that our women, when they come in, that they have. They may need a protective order. They may have injuries. Their children may be threatened. They're suffering from PTSD. So there's a lot of trauma involved. So we've got to address each crises individually. We've got a legal department that helps with, taking a statement, taking pictures, getting legal remedy. We've got a counseling department that deals with trauma, PTSD, that kind of thing. We've got a children's department and a legal department that help with maybe getting protective orders or custody orders, getting those kids transferred to another school that's safer for them. We've got a crisis team that's 24 hours here all the time to deal with any kind of crisis they may be having on site. We've got a team that helps get them their IDs, that kind of thing. So once we can, and I hate using air quotes, but once we can sort of get to a stable place, then we can move up that triangle where we can work on healing and education through the counseling process. And it's important that we address both mom and the children. We get them on the same page. That way, any of the progress the children are making is not undone by mom, whether intentionally, unintentionally, kind of thing. We want them to both heal in the same path, direction. And that's where you start seeing the prevention part, where we don't want the kids to grow up to be victims or abusers and stuff like that. And then we help with the education. We want the moms or single ladies, they don't have to have kids, but we want them to get educated or to be employed. And the whole process, once we're traveling further up that triangle, in Maslow's case, it's self-actualization. For us, it's self-sufficiency. We want her to be independent, self-sufficient, to where she is a great role model for the kids. But however, she can have sustained success on her own. She doesn't need to depend on an abusive person to pay the bills. She doesn't need to depend on an abusive person to take care of the kids, to, for all her needs. She can do it herself. And then therefore, she's healing, she's healthy. She can seek out someone who's going to add value to her life, not put her down, not cause fear, not threaten the children. And so that's the whole point of our agency, basically, is those kind of things. And I'm sorry, I had to really talk about everything because it all comes together. There's a goal, it's a purpose, and we all have our parts in it. And so in our particular part, Rochelle and I, is we go out into the public and we do trainings and presentations. Rochelle teaches classes to high schools and junior highs as a prevention piece to hopefully curb or prevent future violence from happening. Is challenging those kids' thought processes. Kids think they know everything, right? So Rochelle's real good at, challenging those thought processes and backing it up with data and that kind of thing, and letting them come to their own conclusion about what is healthy, what is not healthy, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and that kind of thing. And then you throw the bit part in on the other side where we're working with the perpetrators, and you can kind of see how it's addressing the whole family unit. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a hope of reunification kind of thing. That is their choice to make. However, the hope is that each individual, whether it's the victim or the perpetrator, can go on to live healthy and happy and violence-free lives for the future, and therefore the kids as well.
I would imagine that the likelihood of someone either becoming a victim or becoming a perpetrator is much higher being a child from a home.
Right.
Those things.
Depending on different studies you look at, it's anywhere between 3 to 4 times more likely to be involved in an abusive relationship for that particular child. Doesn't guarantee it, but it makes it way more likely.
What in this region do you think is leading to such a high percentage of domestic violence? Like you had mentioned that we're sitting on the top 3 in the state. What factors do you think are kind of leading to that?
I think it's as being West Texans, I think there's a general sense that we're different than a lot of parts of the state. We take pride in being friendly and stuff, but on the dark side of that is there's a lot of secrecy, and it's really not talked about. And I think that's how it perpetrates, is when you're not willing to address the issue, you're not willing to talk about it, therefore you're refusing education about it. I think that just perpetrates generationally down. That's my opinion. We're resourceful people, we're prideful people in this area. But however, there's a downside to that as well. And I think the more we talk, because we're kind of like domestic violence is like I always joke about it, say we're like the stepchild of all the redheaded stepchild who gets beaten by, when it comes to different agencies. When we're at different agency fairs and we have our table set up, everyone is, coming around to the different agencies. Oh, the Boys and Girls Club, that's great, this and that. Once they see our table, you see a lot of heads turn, or once they realize who we are, what we do, they're not interested. That's an ugly subject. They just turn away. It still happens to this day. A lot of the times the people who are only interested usually have experience of somehow, whether themselves or a loved one or a friend, and they're the ones that engage with us, and you've got curious people as well. But for a lot of the times, they'll turn away, they'll walk away. They don't want to know about it. And so I think that part right there plays a huge major factor in when you don't even accept that it's happening, or it's a private thing. We don't talk about that stuff. That's a private matter. It's a family matter. And so I think the more we can open up about it and we're willing to accept our faults, but we're willing to fix it. And I think that would go a long ways towards curbing that, bringing those numbers down.
Yeah.
It's ugly because there's a villain in this story. You know, there's an ugliness to it. No one wants to admit, I beat my wife, I beat my kids. And they're not going to admit, like, oh, the man I married terrifies me, or the father of my children is a monster. And so there's a lot of stigma to that.
Culturally, what sort of obstacles are these women facing to exit the situation? Before it gets to the point to where police are intervening. You know what I mean?
I think part of it is we're in the Bible Belt, and if there's marriage involved and it's through the church, there's a lot of belief that, I will not undo what God has binded together kind of thing. I think that plays a part in some. Again, the stigma. There's so many women that have come through here who didn't call the police for the fact that they were actually protecting their husbands or the father of the children. They did not want their children to see daddy go to jail. I've heard that so many times. And I've heard a lot of the breaking point came when the violence turned toward the kids. That she's like, you can beat me all you want, you can say whatever, but once you start hurting the kids, I'm done. And so a lot of the times that's what happens. It's a lot of the stigma. It's a lot of the stigma thing. Women are nurturers and caregivers by nature. They want to work things out. They believe in the best of people. They want it to all work out, and they hang on to that hope. And I think that keeps them there as well. A lot of the times, economics is a huge factor. Economically, I always tell people, if a woman comes to the shelter, she's hit rock bottom, because if she had the resources or support anywhere else, she would be there, and she doesn't. So once they get here, we know for her, it's really bad because she has nowhere else to go. And so economically, I believe it's a huge factor. Not saying that domestic violence doesn't happen on all socioeconomic levels. However, the other levels, they have resources. Someone who's wealthy can move. She can get on a plane or, get up and move. She has the resources. A lot of our ladies here don't, and they have nowhere else to go. They don't have transportation. So a lot of the obstacles, the big one's going to be economics. Is going to be a huge factor as to why she stays, especially if there's kids involved. They want those kids to be cared for. They really believe that we'll suffer through the violence rather than be homeless. And unfortunately, that's a tough choice to make, for them. So that's the choices they're facing all the time.
What sort of obstacles or challenges are in the way to getting them to self-sufficiency?
A lot of it has to do with, PTSD and trauma. I would say the overwhelming majority of our ladies are going to have some form of that experience in that. So getting them to a place where they can actually start to even think about working or, going back to school, just that right there is a challenge. That's a major obstacle. Unfortunately, self-medication is a coping mechanism a lot of our victims use. There's not a lot of detox places here, or they're so full. And so that's a deterrent as well, to get even at a basic level, just to get them properly functioning, get them off of those meds or prescription medications or the alcohol, whatever it is. That's an obstacle. Once we can get past that, then we've got to look at, what are some other obstacles? She probably wasn't allowed to work, maybe, or allowed to go to school. So we've got to work on those job skills, or get her back into school to where she can make money, because it's a vicious cycle if you really think about it. A lot of them can get the minimum paying jobs, wages. However, she's basically paying for childcare, and she doesn't have transportation. So can you imagine trying to work your way up when you don't have a car, you don't have anyone to watch your kids? What are you going to do? And that's a really tough spot to be in, because you can get out of that violent situation, but now where are you going to go? And so those are the main obstacles we face on a daily basis, is trying to get them past these certain obstacles. Because once they can reach some sort of level of stability and sustainability, they've got a shot at really succeeding. I mean, and we have a whole other program they can transition out of here, because we'll give them 6 months where they don't have to pay for any of our services at all. But once that time is up, we've got to make room for other people coming in, that kind of thing. They can still utilize our services. They just need a place to stay, a different place to stay. It's kind of like an outpatient program. We call it non-residential services. So they can continue receiving the free counseling, unlimited free counseling for both her and the kids. She can continue coming to those different support groups that we provide. She can continue to get assistance with maybe a few groceries, or if there's still a level of danger involved or present, still do her laundry at the shelter kind of stuff. She's just not living here anymore, but she's still working towards that self-sufficiency. So it may be a longer time frame for her, and that's fine. We totally encourage that. But that's, I would say those are the main obstacles that our ladies in our population face. Is its economics and transportation, childcare, lack of and lack of mental health assistance, really.
You had mentioned mental health services. I imagine that just access to healthcare in general is probably
It is
a tough one.
It sure is. Unbelievably, a lot of our women won't qualify for like Medicaid or something like that. The kids maybe can, but some of our clientele can't. And again, it's going back to depending on what kind of job she can secure. Is it going to be enough for, is insurance going to be an issue? Paying for childcare, she's got to pay for transportation probably. Gosh, what does she have left at the end of that paycheck? What are they going to eat on? And so it's real frustrating. It's frustrating for me, and I'm not even in that situation. So I can't even imagine what they're going through.
In the field that you're in, knowing what these women and children need resource-wise, is it frustrating sometimes hearing the conversation around limiting access to some of those resources?
Definitely. There's in domestic violence, there's a lot of victim blaming. I still hear it today. Well, why does she stay? Does she like that? Does she like getting beat? Or what's the matter with her? Why doesn't she just leave? Those are common questions and comments that we always hear. And we're like, wait a minute, there's a whole other side to this that you're not aware of, So it is frustrating to hear that they want to limit the resources, because we need those resources. The numbers justify, and that's just the ones that are asking for help. There's so many more thousands that are suffering in silence, that because of some of the reasons you just mentioned, they need help as well. And for whatever reason they're going through, they're not asking for it, or they're too scared to ask for it, or they don't even know about it. And so I'm a big proponent of keeping those services alive and out there at the forefront. No one deserves to be terrified at your own home.
As a organization, what is the biggest challenge you guys face?
My personal opinion, I believe the biggest challenge is meeting the needs of everyone. Even though we are such a large shelter and we have a pretty good number of staff involved, if everyone were to seek services that needed it, it would be so overwhelming. And I don't know what would you do, because we're for the most part we're operating at maximum capacity for the most part. All of us even though we're kind of got specialized jobs, we all cross train and we all do different jobs. For instance, like Rochelle, she does the same thing I do. She's out there in the public doing the trainings, the presentations. She's doing outreach in the different counties. But then, if needed, she needs to go. If they need her in our hotline, helping answer questions or helping the residents here, she's got to do it. She's on call. She'll take a 24-hour on-call shift. She's got to do it. And we're all like that. We fill in where we need to, and we kind of jump in and help in other areas that's not necessarily our jobs, but it's to make it. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is trying to meet the needs of all our clientele, and not just do quality work. That's a big thing, is not just handing them a piece of paper and say, go here. Actually being able to go with them through the process, walk with them. A lot of these women, they don't have the support system. There's no one there with them. We're the support system. And I think it's for their healing process, for supportive, moral support, that kind of thing. It goes a long ways when you can help her through the entire process. Like the legal process, for example. She comes here, we give her all her legal options, legal rights, let her make the decision what she wants to do, and then we support that decision. If it means helping her with an affidavit, if it means going to court with her, if it means going with her to the police department, to take pictures of injuries, if it means going to CPS court, if it means helping her get prepared for testifying in a criminal trial against her perpetrator. I mean, the time frame, it could be a long time, but it's so important. I think it goes a long ways towards her healing, and that's what we've been told, is it helps a lot when someone's there through the whole process instead of go here, do this, good luck. And so I think that it's not just about doing the job, it's about seeing it through. That's the best way I can put it, is seeing it through. Seeing them from the worst point of their lives all the way being there to where they're actually making it. To me, that's the biggest challenge.
How many, clientele or victims at a time are you guys set up to actually have?
I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I want to say at maximum capacity, we would be able to house 220 women and children. But that's not including our non-resident population, which is an unlimited number, But as far as housing here at the shelter, it's going to be about 220.
How important do you think it is for women in their current relationships to be involved in the finances, and why is that?
I totally believe that every woman should be involved in the finances. And I know a lot of times the genderization, the roles, what a man's role is, what a woman's role is, and stuff like it can differ from family to family, that kind of thing. However, my opinion is that when decisions are made as a family, it should be made as a family. And so I think it's vitally important for that, as a safeguard, to know exactly what's going on with the finances. I've had lots of women over the years who did not even know, when I would ask, how much does your husband make, in divorce cases, she has no clue. He's never allowed her to see a paycheck. She doesn't have access to the bank account. She couldn't answer anything, had no idea about taxes, nothing, because she was not privy, not allowed to, access to that information. And so I think it's very important for them to be involved, whether they work or not. Parenting decisions are made together. Why not financial decisions? I think it should be shared, equal partnership. And a lot of that goes back to male privilege, that kind of thing, where I'm the man, I work, pretty much my opinion matters more than yours kind of thing. We don't want that. It should be an equal partnership, equal say.
Yeah, and I imagine you had mentioned earlier the two values, and one of those, the number one being power, and I imagine that having complete control over finances is a tool to hold that power.
It is a very effective way to have control over somebody, or power, is to control the finances.
Yeah, because even sorry, my brain's going off on different tangents, but like, I know you had mentioned economics as an issue, and the lower socioeconomic class may be having more difficulty getting out of the situation. I imagine the victims in higher socioeconomic situations that do have trouble getting out of it, those women probably have no access to. They may be in a wealthy family, like the husband may make lots of money, but they don't have access to the bank accounts or the. I imagine that economics is still a major factor.
It is, to some degree, it is a major factor. However, in cases like those where you've got a wealthy business owner and she's a stay-at-home mom, and yes, the family is wealthy, however, he's cut her off on the accounts, she still has the option to go get an attorney and fight that, because they know that there's a lot of money involved. So they're going to be more apt to get involved with something because they're going to see it on the back end. They know that, oh, well, she's going to get X millions of dollars in this divorce settlement. Yeah, I'll help her. Versus our client who has no job skills, who doesn't have, anything going for her. What's the incentive for that particular attorney to help her, except out of the goodness of their heart, So that's what happens a lot of the times.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't thought about the willingness of obviously if you can afford a team of attorneys versus
Right.
I'm assuming, unfortunately, an overworked pro bono attorney that has limited time.
Right, and that's just the legal aspect of it. If you look into other areas, more than likely she's going to have connections somewhere. Hey, the wife of a friend was going to help her out with, we'll help you get out of there, or something like that. Because their circle of friends are going to have resources as well, and they kick in and help out a lot of the times too.
Yeah, makes sense.
The other question I had is, do you know the demographic, like the breakdown of the demographic you serve?
Yes, 55% of our clientele are Hispanic. About 33% is going to be Caucasian, and the rest African American, and then a little bit like a 1 or 2% of other, whatever that, you can fill in the blank on that one, whatever you want to. But yeah, as for this area, or for our particular clientele, 55% is Hispanic.
Is there a number on age demographic as well? I mean, does it typically be
a little bit?
Or?
Actually, the national average, the victims are usually about, the ones that report usually are about 18 to 24. Our demographics older. I would say it's ranging between 35 to around, maybe 30 to 40. That range, around 35 being the median. It's a little bit older. I don't know why.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's, unfortunately, that this is maybe a sad assumption. I wonder if that's because the victims in our area are waiting like, it's not that they're not experiencing it at
Right.
age, but they're waiting longer to report it, or
That would be a very good assumption, that they're waiting longer to report it. You could also say, even though we're a college town, Texas Tech is a big population of it. It may not get reported while they're here, and then once they graduate, they move off, kind of thing, or something. I don't know if that plays a part in that or not. So I really don't know.
I don't think so.
Do you have anything that do you think is important that we may have missed or skimmed over?
It's not a Lubbock thing. I was wanting to throw this out there, and I don't know if it's useful or not, but every year in Texas, because of domestic violence, it's the number averages around 135 women are killed by their partner. That's a lot. That's murder, you know? And so, and Lubbock usually has, or the surrounding areas usually has like 2 or 3 a year, you know, that fit into that category and stuff. So I don't know if that's useful or not, but you know, the whole reason that, gosh, I'm rambling again, but the whole reason that the Violence Against Women Act was enacted was because in our nation, domestic violence was the number one killer of women for a lot of years through the 70s and part of the 80s. And so they recognized that, hey, we've got to do something about this. And that's why they enacted that particular law. And so now I don't know what we rank now as far as killer of women, but we're still up there, but I think now we're in competition with cancer and heart disease kind of stuff. But at one point in time, domestic violence was the number one killer of women in our nation. That's unacceptable, you know. So, but like between 2001 to 2012, the number of soldiers we lost in Iraq, Afghanistan stuff was like, I want to say it was like 11,000 soldiers that were killed. And that same time frame in the United States, almost as many women were killed by their partners, which is astounding because in war you expect death. That is something that is, you know, gonna happen, but you shouldn't expect your loved one to kill you, you know, and you know, so that's an astounding stat right there to give you the idea of